What if one house could grow your food, capture free solar heat in winter, stay cooler in summer, and potentially reduce the energy needed to heat the home? It sounds like something from a futuristic luxury home magazine. But in 2026, builders are taking a much simpler idea, the greenhouse, and connecting it directly to the barndominium. And from the outside, some of these homes look incredible. Dark steel siding, dramatic glass walls, clean modern roof lines, and a greenhouse glowing behind the structure like a private glass garden. But here's the part most people don't realize. Connecting a greenhouse to your home isn't as simple as adding more windows. You have to deal with humidity, condensation, thermal performance, ventilation, drainage, structural loads, and the transition between an unconditioned growing space and your living space. Get it right, and you could create one of the most useful spaces in the entire home. Get it wrong, and that beautiful greenhouse could become an expensive moisture and energy problem. So why are savvy barndominium builders doing it in 2026? And what does it actually cost? Let's build one from the ground up.
Welcome to Barndo Dreams.
Barndominiums people actually want to build. If you enjoy seeing how these homes go from a simple structure to something completely extraordinary, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications. Because today we're going inside a greenhouse-connected barndominium and breaking down 3 different ways you can build one, what each option can cost, and the engineering details you absolutely cannot ignore. Let's start outside. Picture a low-slung modern barndominium wrapped in dark corrugated steel. A clean, single-slope roof cuts a dramatic diagonal across the sky, and then, along the south-facing side, something completely changes the look of the building. A massive glass volume project from the structure, like a glowing jewel box. From the road, the home still feels industrial and modern. But walk closer, and you start noticing what's happening behind that glass. Citrus trees, tomato vines, herbs, living plants reaching toward the sunlight. And in the middle of winter, that greenhouse can still feel alive while everything outside is dormant. But here's the detail that separates a serious integrated design from a greenhouse that was simply bolted onto the side of a house. This one was designed as part of the barndominium from day one. The structure, foundation, roof geometry, drainage, glazing, and connection between the 2 spaces are planned together. It's not 2 buildings pretending to be one. It's one architectural system with 2 very different environments. And that distinction matters. Because the moment you connect a greenhouse to conditioned living space, you're no longer just designing a beautiful garden. You're designing a thermal, structural, and moisture control system. And that's where things get interesting. So why are builders suddenly paying more attention to this idea? There are 3 major reasons. Number 1, energy performance. A properly designed south-facing greenhouse can act as a solar buffer. During sunny winter days, sunlight heats the greenhouse interior, creating a warmer zone against the house. That heat can potentially reduce the amount of conventional heating required, depending heavily on climate, orientation, glazing, ventilation, and how the spaces are connected. And there's another advantage. A greenhouse can influence the home's overall solar strategy. Single-slope roofs can be designed around solar exposure, while large glazed areas can bring significantly more daylight into adjacent spaces. But here's the important part. More glass doesn't automatically mean lower energy bills. Poorly selected glazing, inadequate shading, bad ventilation, or uncontrolled heat gain can turn your greenhouse into an oven during summer. That's why the design has to work for the entire year, not just the perfect winter afternoon. Number 2, year-round food production. The second reason is much simpler. Food. A greenhouse attached to a barndominium can extend the growing season dramatically. Instead of depending entirely on an outdoor garden, homeowners can create a controlled environment for herbs, vegetables, seedlings, and certain fruiting plants. And for people building on rural acreage, that's a completely different way of thinking about the home. The greenhouse isn't just decoration. It's part of the property's function. Number 3, the design has finally caught up. And then there's the visual side. Steel, glass, timber, stone, clean roof lines, living plants. These materials work incredibly well together. A greenhouse no longer has to look like a plastic-covered garden structure attached to the back of a barn. It can become one of the most dramatic architectural features of the entire home. And that's exactly why we're seeing this idea become so attractive to modern barndominium builders. But now comes the question that really matters. How do you actually attach one to a barndominium? There isn't just one way to do this. There are 3 major configurations worth considering, and each one creates a completely different home. Option number 1, the lean-to greenhouse. This is the simplest approach. The greenhouse attaches directly to one exterior wall of the barndominium, usually on the best solar exposure side of the home. Think roughly 360 square feet of growing space. It's relatively straightforward compared with the other options and can create a beautiful transition between the house and garden. For a conceptual 2026 budget, you might see something in the neighborhood of $18,000 to $32,000, depending on glazing, foundation requirements, framing, ventilation, climate controls, and site conditions. But don't mistake simple for automatic. The connection still needs to be properly designed. Option number 2, the integrated atrium. Now we're getting into serious architecture. Instead of putting the greenhouse outside the house, the greenhouse becomes part of the home's central layout. Imagine an O-shaped or courtyard-style barndominium with a glass-covered garden sitting right in the middle. The kitchen, dining room, hallway, or living spaces can visually open toward the planted courtyard. Suddenly, the greenhouse isn't an accessory. It's the centerpiece of the floor plan. A conceptual 20 by 20 foot atrium could land around $42,000 to $68,000, depending on the structure, glazing system, foundation, drainage, climate control, and interior finishes. And visually, this is probably the most impressive option of the 3. Option number 3, the end wall greenhouse. The third option takes an entire end wall of the barndominium and turns it into a growing zone. Instead of one smaller greenhouse attached to the side, the entire end of the building becomes glass. A conceptual budget could fall around $35,000 to $58,000, again depending heavily on the actual materials in sight. The biggest advantage is scale. You can create a large growing environment without disrupting the main rectangular footprint of the barndominium. And when you step inside, the greenhouse becomes almost like an extension of the living room. But whichever configuration you choose, there's one transition detail that deserves serious attention: the thermal buffer. You don't want to open a door directly from your conditioned living room into a hot, humid greenhouse. Instead, consider creating a small transition zone, essentially an airlock between the 2 environments. Depending on the design, this could include an insulated vestibule, 2 separate doors, proper air sealing, moisture-resistant finishes, drainage, controlled ventilation. For a conceptual budget, you could allocate roughly $4,500 to $8,000 for this transition space. And that's money I would rather see spent here than saved and regretted later. Because the greenhouse is supposed to add value to your home. It shouldn't become the reason your home develops condensation, mold, or unnecessary energy losses. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe to Barndo Dreams. And I'm curious, would you rather have the greenhouse attached to the side of your barndominium, built into the center, or replace an entire end wall with glass? Drop 1, 2, or 3 in the comments. Because next, we're getting into the part most pretty greenhouse videos completely skip: the foundation, framing, glazing, ventilation, drainage, and the real engineering behind making this work. Let's keep going. At first glance, adding a greenhouse to a barndominium sounds simple. Build a house, attach the glass, add some plants. Except that's not how this works. The moment that greenhouse becomes part of the home structure, everything changes. The foundation, the steel frame, the roof, drainage, HVAC, insulation, even the way the building handles moisture. And the biggest mistake is trying to add it after the barndominium is already built. This has to be designed into the home from the very first drawing. It starts with the ground. Before the steel goes up, the site has to be graded so water moves exactly where it's supposed to. And on an O-shaped or courtyard design, this becomes even more important. Get the slope wrong, and that beautiful glass atrium we've been talking about can become a giant collection point for rainwater. Then comes the foundation. The slab and reinforced footers aren't just supporting a normal barndominium anymore. They also have to account for the additional loads created by the glazed sections above. And this is where things get interesting. Once the steel frame starts going up, the greenhouse and the barndominium stop being two separate structures. They become one skeleton. Whether you're using post-frame construction or rigid steel, the framing has to be designed around the greenhouse from the beginning. Because those enormous glass sections aren't lightweight decorations. They create loads. They require reinforced connections, properly sized purlins, and waterproofing details specifically designed around the glazing. And if you're building an O-shaped version, there's another complication most people never see coming. The greenhouse roof can actually become part of the building's lateral structural system. That's impressive when it's engineered correctly. But get the connections or drainage wrong, and you're no longer dealing with an aesthetic problem. You're dealing with a structural one. And then we reach the roof. The single slope roof is one of the biggest reasons this design works so well. Point it correctly, and the entire roof can become a massive solar-ready surface. But there's another advantage that's easier to miss. The high north-facing wall can carry continuous clear-story windows, bringing soft natural light deep into the home without exposing the interior to the same direct solar heat you'd get from south-facing glass. So you've got solar potential, you've got natural light, and you've got that dramatic modern profile. But now ask yourself, where does all the water go? That's the problem. A single slope roof concentrates rainfall toward one side of the building. And according to the figures in your script, that's why this design calls for 6 to 7-inch commercial K-style gutters, rather than ordinary 5-inch residential gutters. At roughly $8 to $15 per linear foot, it's another cost that has to be considered before construction begins. And if you're building somewhere with serious snowfall, there's another problem waiting at the low side of the roof. Snow can accumulate and slide directly toward entrances and walkways. That's why snow guards can add another $2,000 to $6,000, along with careful site planning to keep people away from those drop zones. So the roof looks simple, but underneath that clean architectural line is a carefully engineered system controlling solar exposure, natural light, rainwater, and snow. And we're still not done, because now we have to make the greenhouse comfortable without turning the rest of the house into a humidity problem. This is where the greenhouse stops being an architectural feature and starts becoming a mechanical challenge. The greenhouse needs its own approach to humidity control and condensate management. It can't simply be treated like another living room. And then comes insulation. Spray foam is commonly used with metal structures, but this is where your script's biggest warning appears. Underestimating spray foam and HVAC sizing can lead to up to $40,000 in rework or lost performance. That's the number I would put on screen, $40,000. Because a beautiful greenhouse means nothing if the humidity, condensation, insulation, and HVAC systems weren't planned correctly. And this is exactly why the greenhouse has to be part of the building design from day one. Only after all of that is handled can you finally move into the part everyone actually wants to see. The interior, the drywall, the flooring, the lighting, and those acoustic wood slat ceilings that can transform a massive steel and glass space from cold and echoing into something that actually feels like a luxury home. At roughly $8,000 to $18,000, they're not cheap. But in a space this large, they can completely change the atmosphere. And that's the real secret of this design. The greenhouse may be what gets people to click, but the engineering is what determines whether the dream actually works. Now let's actually walk through this thing. You step through a covered entry into a foyer that opens straight into a vast, high-ceilinged living zone. That clear-story light we just talked about is pouring in from the north wall. To your right, a glass door leads into the thermal buffer vestibule, your transition space between house and greenhouse. Push through that, and you're standing in the atrium itself, sunlit, humid, alive with herbs, vegetables, and citrus trees, all visible directly from the kitchen island. In the O-shaped layout, the greenhouse sits dead center, with the rest of the rooms wrapping around it, which means you get private, outdoor-feeling living that's actually fully indoor and climate-protected year-round. In a lean-to version, the greenhouse attaches directly to the south-facing living zone, usually right next to the kitchen, so you get that seamless hardest-to-cook flow. Walk out, cut basil, walk back in. And here are 3 hidden features that elevate this from nice greenhouse to private resort. A colonnade corridor wrapping the atrium, echoing a Roman peristyle, that gives you bedroom access without exposing your private zones to the street. Those acoustic wood slat ceilings we mentioned earlier, which double as concealment for the spray foam insulation while warming up the industrial steel aesthetic. And smart track lighting running along the high wall, giving the whole space that studio-quality light wash after the sun goes down. Here's where this beautiful greenhouse barndominium gets serious. Because the design might look simple from the outside, but by the time you add everything that actually makes it a finished home, the numbers can change dramatically. And there's one part of the budget that can make the biggest difference of all: labor. Let's start at the bottom. A basic barndominium shell, frame, roof, and siding fully erected can run around $30 to $65 per square foot. But at this point, you don't have a finished home. You have the structure. Add the slab, windows, doors, and the work needed to get the building dried in, and you're closer to $45 to $75 per square foot. Then the expensive systems begin. Electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and insulation can push the project into the $85 to $130 per square foot range. And finally, you have to make the place livable. Drywall, kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, trim, fixtures. That's where a fully finished build can reach roughly $100 to $200 per square foot, depending on the level of finish. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. In 2026, standard finished barndominiums can land around $65 to $160 per square foot, while premium turnkey builds can reach $225 to $350 or more. For a 2,000 square foot home, that puts the finished construction somewhere around $130,000 to $320,000 before land. And remember a greenhouse. Depending on which configuration you choose, you're adding another $22,500 to $76,000. But here's where two builders with the exact same floor plan can end up with completely different budgets. Labor. If you can handle a significant amount of the work yourself, specialized construction costs can fall around $85 to $95 per square foot. Bring in a general contractor, and that number can climb toward $150 to $190 per square foot. That's a massive difference. And there's one more number you need to be careful with. You may see prefab barndominium kits advertised for just $20 to $35 per square foot. That sounds almost too good to be true. And that's because you're not comparing the same thing. Those numbers generally represent the shell materials, exterior walls, trusses, siding, and similar components. They don't represent a finished, move-in ready home. So if you see a barndominium advertised at an unbelievably low price, the first question should always be, what's actually included? Because the cheapest number isn't necessarily the cheapest house. And once you've figured out what the build will cost, there's another question that can make or break the entire project. Can you actually finance it? This is one of the least exciting parts of building a dream home, but it could become one of the most important, because getting the house built is only half the equation. You also need a lender who understands what you're building. Conventional financing through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac can be challenging when your area doesn't have enough comparable barndominiums. The lender isn't just looking at your construction budget. They're looking at what the finished property can realistically be worth. And if there aren't enough comparable sales nearby, that creates a problem. That's why portfolio lenders, particularly local banks and credit unions, can sometimes be a better option. They keep the loan on their own books and may have more flexibility when evaluating an alternative property. There are also other potential routes, including USDA rural development loans, VA loans for eligible borrowers, and construction to permanent financing. But don't wait until you've already bought the land to start asking these questions, because the appraisal can reveal a value gap before construction even begins, when you still have time to change the design or budget. And then there's resale. A barndominium can perform very differently depending on where it's located. In established markets such as rural Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee, these homes can have strong demand. But move into a thinner market with very few comparable properties, and the appraisal may not fully recognize everything you've spent. That means the custom features you love might not necessarily return every dollar when you sell. So if resale matters, build for more than yourself. A permanent foundation, a practical floor plan, 3 or 4 bedrooms, if appropriate for the market, conventional quality finishes, and most importantly, document everything: engineering reports, permits, specifications, invoices, construction records. Because when someone eventually asks, why is this house worth that much? You want the documentation to answer the question for you. But even if you've solved the construction budget, found the right lender, and protected the resale value, there's still one mistake hiding inside this design that could cost you up to $40,000. And it has nothing to do with the kitchen. The greenhouse is probably the most visually impressive part of this entire home, but it may also be the most misunderstood. Because an attached greenhouse isn't a magic heating system. It's primarily a food production space and thermal buffer. Yes, it can capture passive solar heat. Yes, it can help reduce heat loss along the south side of the house. And yes, it can extend your growing season. But it doesn't mean you can simply turn off your heating system. And this is exactly where the engineering becomes important. You have a warm, humid greenhouse sitting directly beside your conditioned living space. If that transition isn't handled correctly, you're not just dealing with uncomfortable temperatures. You're potentially creating moisture and condensation problems. That's why the thermal buffer vestibule matters. It creates a controlled transition between the greenhouse and the living space instead of allowing the two environments to behave like one giant room. When it's designed properly, you get the benefits without asking your HVAC system to fight the greenhouse every day. But there's another issue that deserves even more attention. Spray foam and HVAC sizing. Underestimate these two things, and the consequences can be expensive. You could be looking at as much as $40,000 in rework or lost performance. That's why this isn't something your contractor should simply estimate by looking at the building and saying, that should be enough. The insulation and HVAC requirements need to be properly calculated. Because if you remember just one warning from this entire video, remember this. The greenhouse might be the feature everyone notices, but the insulation and HVAC are what determine whether you actually enjoy living with it. And now, after all the costs, engineering, financing, and potential mistakes, let's step back and see what this house actually feels like when everything comes together. Imagine walking through the finished front door. You enter a massive living space with high ceilings and soft natural light pouring through the upper windows. Then you notice the glass. Beyond the thermal buffer is the atrium. Warm, green, alive. Herbs growing beside the kitchen. Citrus trees reaching toward the glass. Vegetables producing food while the rest of the house stays comfortable. And above it all, a mezzanine looks down into the greenhouse. Suddenly, the greenhouse isn't an addition anymore. It's the centerpiece. The kitchen faces it. The living spaces wrap around it. The circulation paths connect to it. And the entire home feels like it's been designed around one central idea, bringing the outdoors inside without giving up comfort. That's what makes this concept so different from a traditional barndominium. It isn't just trying to look luxurious. It's trying to make the luxury functional. You get the open steel structure, the dramatic natural light, the food production, the thermal buffer effect, in a space that feels more like a private resort than a conventional metal building. But there's still one part of this house we haven't completely revealed, the actual floor plan. Because once you see exactly how the rooms wrap around that greenhouse and where the hidden features are placed, the entire design starts to make sense. And that's what we're looking at next. In the next episode, we're opening up the full 3D sketch and floor plan of this build. You'll see exactly where the greenhouse sits, how the rooms connect to it, how the glazing and drainage are handled, and which luxury details make the design work. But we're not stopping there. Right after that, we're taking on a completely different challenge. 15 prefab homes that give barndominiums serious competition in 2026. We'll compare their cost, construction speed, financing, and resale potential to see whether the barndominium really is still the smartest alternative home option. So if you want to see the floor plan behind this design and find out whether prefab homes could actually beat the barndominium, subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications. Because the next episode could completely change which type of home you want to build. I'll see you there.